What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Tonight, the nightly live stream that remains free for 1 week longer, a hoop ball presentation. I'm Dan Besbris, and I'm joined as always on Wednesday nights while I fill in here for Vince Miracle with the one and only Jordan Smith, who is once again this week without a webcam. So it's headshot Jordan. What's going on, man?
Hey, yeah, no more webcam for me this week. I have to use my work webcam in order to do that, and unfortunately, I don't want to stay at work till 11 o'clock every single night. So
That's
tonight
pretty
will pass.
Central Time Zone man, as we've talked before on this show. He is stuck just a mere 1 hour, I think, earlier than that insane World Series game going on right now. Which, for those of you that are going to be joining us in this live chat, I'm just going to go ahead and take a moment before we even begin to apologize for every once in a while. I'm going to be right in the middle of a thought, and I'm just going to glance this way. And that's where the television is. Although we were blessed to some degree by the fact that Game 7 actually just went into a rain delay. So we've got a finite amount of time, Jordan, to talk about some of the games that just ended or are close to ending and kind of the immediate reaction here on a big 10-card Wednesday evening in the association. So without further ado, why don't we just start on the early one, and as people join us in the live chat and pop some questions in, we'll kind of bounce back and forth between the games going on or ending and some of the questions coming at us as well. You ready to roll?
Sure, let's hit it.
Early game today, there were a couple. Philly was in Charlotte, and once again, they actually led that game for a little bit, and once again, they were unable to hang on. Charlotte, frankly, just a better team. They made a bunch of strides last year. Healthy Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is, I mean, he has a solid fantasy game, but just from an NBA standpoint, he is very helpful for that ball club. And Cody Zeller's starting to get healthy again as well, so they're not missing Roy Hibbert all that much. But, Jordan, we love to talk about the 76ers. I talked about them this morning on Fantasy NBA Today with Zane Danani, and we were just trying to really get a feel for who was going to be the guy to do something interesting tonight. And the answer, in kind of short form, is nobody. I mean, there were a couple of serviceable lines in that ballgame, but nobody kind of popped off the page. The stories for me, and then I'd love to know what your thoughts were on Philadelphia. The stories for me, Ersan Ilyasova, who originally wasn't even expected to play tonight, had 14 points in his Philly debut, a couple of three-pointers in 23 minutes. Dario Saric continued to rebound, still not shooting the ball all that great, but you're starting to see a little bit more of a well-roundedness. Not much in the assist column, but 14 points, couple of threes, 7 rebounds. He did have a steal mixed in there. So he's starting to come around a little bit. And then Robert Covington, we all just kept hoping that one of these games here, this first week and change, he would do anything at all. But he has been abysmal to this point. And for my money, I'm still hanging on to Covington, but it right now is by a thread. Where do you sit with Philadelphia after this ball game and after their first 4?
Yeah, I think the thing to take away from this is Robert Covington yet again. I mean, 26 minutes tonight, Ersan Ilyasova came in and played 23, and with Dario Saric playing 29, I mean, he's going to log time at both power forward and small forward, and I'm really, really nervous about Robert Covington's value moving forward. I don't think that he'll be able to sustain the same level of production he has the last couple of years. He'll still get you good steals and threes in limited time, but you should expect a lot of inconsistency. But you should probably have expected that with Robert Covington to begin with.
Yeah, it's tough, man. This is a guy where obviously he's never going to shoot a tremendously high percentage. The thing that worries me, Jordan, is that last year he was taking about 10 shots a ball game, and this year he's only around 5 or 6 in almost the same exact amount of time. So he's just less involved. Does that worry you? Less, more, or the same than the simple inconsistency?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's worrying me more than he has last couple of years, and that makes sense. Joel Embiid's come in now, and Joel Embiid has had a sky-high usage rate when he's been on the floor. Dario Saric is coming in and all of a sudden taking 10, 11 shots a game. Sergio Rodriguez has been handling the ball pretty well for them. I mean, even Nick Stauskas has been getting solid minutes lately. He played 30 tonight, and he's getting up shots all of a sudden too. And I mean, we're talking about a team that only played or Jahlil Okafor 24 minutes tonight and didn't play Joel Embiid tonight and didn't have Nerlens Noel or Jared Bayless or Ben Simmons available. Like, I mean, it's looking much, much darker on the Robert Covington horizon in terms of how many shot attempts he's going to get up.
Yeah, this is certainly the stretch of time where it's going to be as difficult as ever to hold on to him. And certainly if you're out there and you're holding on to Covington, I wouldn't fault you if you had to cut bait. If you need that roster spot, I would certainly suggest in a perfect world, hang on just a little bit longer. Give him another game or two, and if it stays this, I mean, this is really unsightly. He put up 2 goose eggs before tonight in the points column. And if we play 20 to 30 minutes and not score, and to be a guy that was basically originally assigned because he could score, that's a really bad sign. But, he's doing it in the steals department. He has 8 of them, I believe, maybe now 10 in his first 4 ball games. So that's a big deal. A guy that can average 2.5 steals, even with almost nothing else, is still mildly useful. So give him a little bit more time if you can, but I wouldn't fault you if you've completely run out of patience. And I think we may, by the way, Jordan, spend more time talking about Philly on this show than any other team because, frankly, what do you even want to talk about from Toronto, Washington? I got nothing.
From Toronto, Washington, do you want to talk about Charlotte first?
I didn't really have much on that side either, but if you got something, fire at me.
Oh, I mean, for me, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist just stands out again. I mean, he's been beginning to rack up defensive stats, and if he's not owned in any league, I think he absolutely should be. That's just my 2 cents from that. But we talked about that a little bit over the last week.
Yeah, he seems to be pretty heavily owned nowadays. I think he's up to about 64% of Yahoo leagues, and a nice 6.13 board, 3 steal, 1 block ball game tonight that solidified things. You saw Cody Zeller get up to 24 minutes tonight. He was kind of weird around the glass. I watched about half of that ball game, and every time a rebound got close to him, somebody else snatched it away, and it was often either Batum or Kidd-Gilchrist. I don't think that's going to be a theme going forward. He should be able to get you 5 to 7 rebounds a game. Good guy to have if you want decent percentages. But he's kind of a borderline guy in standard leagues to me, where right now he's probably on the good side of it. But I would need a little bit more, just a little bit more out of Cody before I make him a kind of a strong ad. I still think he's the guy, though, at center on that Charlotte side. We did have a couple of questions pop in here. Someone offered Trevor Ariza for Gordon Hayward in a league. Which side of that do you fall on?
For me, it's Gordon Hayward. I love Gordon Hayward's game, and I think he just has a much more versatile game. And Trevor Ariza is great as a 3 and D guy. I mean, like, he just excels at that, but he really, really hurts your percentages. He doesn't really score more than average for you. But whereas Gordon Hayward can do it all, and there was reports out today that he's going to come back next week. So while I do love owning Rockets players, I think Gordon Hayward is an exceptionally safe player with a little bit higher upside.
Yeah, to me, it comes down to what kind of league you're in, where Gordon Hayward is certainly the guy that's going to be able to do more things for you, but Trevor Ariza's advantage in the turnover department sort of nullifies a little bit of that in say, a roto league, where right now you're already kind of counting stats, and Hayward's going to be out for a few more weeks. But, yeah, I mean, if you can sort of absorb a few missed games, Hayward would be the guy there. But to me, they're very close. So kind of weigh things out and see which is the need, what kind of league you're in, and make the call from there. Injury-related question that actually crept up, and we'll probably hit on some of these players, or frankly, we can hit on them now and then not hit on them as we go through the games tonight. Jeremy Lin injured his hamstring in Brooklyn's game this evening, so we can go ahead and jump ahead to that ball game. And Brooklyn won, which may be the most incredible thing of all. I know it's their second one of the year, but they beat another team that was atrocious for their first victory. And this time, they took care of a Detroit team that, to me, is not terrible. I wouldn't say Detroit is the class of the East, but they're certainly a serviceable ball club. And Brooklyn beat them largely because of Brook Lopez, who took 21 shots from the field and made a lot of them. He had 34 points. Sean Kilpatrick had 24 off the bench. You saw Isaiah Whitehead play 20 minutes in this one and turn the ball over on almost every possession. Who do you think is the guy that benefits from Jeremy Lin's absence? Is it Kilpatrick? Is it Whitehead? Is it perhaps a return of Gravis Vasquez or Randy Foye? I know people are kind of champing at the bit to go pick somebody up on the Brooklyn side. And honestly, I don't know that there's an obvious choice here.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Kilpatrick had a great line tonight, and if he's going to play to 20 minutes a game and do anything close to that, then he should be given a chance. As for like a pure point guard replacement to Jeremy Lin, I don't think it's on their roster right now. I mean, we saw what happened last year after Jared Jack went down with his Achilles injury. Gosh, who was it? That kid that came in for him.
I'm having a brain fart here. I know you're talking about sort of a shorter, stout point guard, right? Used to be with Indiana.
Yep. And he just, they couldn't find anybody to replace Jared Jack's minutes, and I don't think they have anybody better this year at all. Randy Foy's played a little bit of point guard in the past. Isaiah Whitehead, they drafted him with a second round pick, but he's not going to play more than 20 minutes a game. They're already distributing their minutes a ton. I don't think anybody benefits.
Would you take a flyer on Sean Kilpatrick after a game like tonight, or I mean, does this feel like one of those big nights followed up by a clunker type of situations?
Yeah, I mean, he's worth a speculative ad. I'm not going to count on him to be a contributor to my team at all. But I mean, after you put up 24 points and take the second most shots on your team, then that's a pretty strong indication that you're going to get some run, whether or not that's going to be in the high 20s where he could be relevant, or that's going to be in the lower 20s or teens or something like that. I don't know. Hopefully he can keep it up, but he's not worth anything more than a speculative at this point.
Well, I think the baseball game's back, so if anybody were still watching us, we certainly thank you for that, but we wouldn't blame you if you weren't. The other injury question tonight, and again, we'll kind of jump ahead a little bit to the early ESPN game. Jake Crowder hurt his ankle. The assumption, I believe that Brad Stevens, the head coach of the Celtics, already came out and said he's expected to miss at least a week with this situation. It looked like Marcus Smart picked up a lot of extra time in his absence. Is that the guy that you'd want in Boston? Is it Jonas Jerebko? We saw, obviously, Al Horford was out tonight, and Amir Johnson stepped up. But in the wing area, where do those minutes fall for Boston now?
Yeah, Marcus Smart's definitely the guy to go after. He started the second half for Jay Crowder, and on top of that, like they played 3-guard lineups where Avery Bradley and Marcus Smart both take on small forwards defensively. I mean, both those guys are such good tenacious defenders that they're more than capable of putting them all on the floor at once. So that's something that you can continue to look forward to. I mean, Jaylen Brown only got 8 minutes and Terry Rozier only got 13 with Jay Crowder going down, while Marcus Smart picked up 33 and a half coming off of, an ankle sprain for the past 2 weeks. So he's definitely the beneficiary, and he was already a borderline standard league guy, I think worth owning in the first place because he has real upside in steals and threes, and he can probably boost his assists and points a little bit this year, maybe even get his field goal percentage to break that 40%, which would really, really help his value. So, he didn't do that tonight. He still struggled with his shot, but give him a chance, and he ought to reward owners, especially in head-to-head leagues.
Not much of relevance on the Chicago side. We saw Bobby Portis actually play a few minutes in that ball game. He was sort of the better option for them late. The other big guys for the Bulls just looked a little bit tired, but otherwise, Jimmy Butler, Rajon Rondo, Nikola Mirotic, and Dwayne Wade were the guys that were sort of the obvious winners, and Taj Gibson continues to play well. Even on an off night, didn't shoot the ball well, but he gave you 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. So much like Detroit, there isn't a whole lot of news from the other team, kind of related to these questions we got coming in. We have a question coming in not about the games tonight. Do you think Gary Harris will play at all this week? That's a very difficult question. And the latest I've seen is that he's close, but I don't know that I'd really bank on it. What about you?
If you're in a weekly league and you have to make the decision to start him over somebody else, I would not. He's going to come back along slowly, and I don't think they're going to force the issue because that's an injury that could linger if they do not take care of him. So I would look for him to play later on in the week, but probably be playing limited minutes if anything. So I would just hold tight on Gary Harris for another week, and then you can see if he gets back into shape or not.
Let's bounce back to the general timeline of games this evening as we wait for some more questions to trickle in on the evening show. I know, again, a lot of people watching that Game 7 of the World Series or asleep here on the East Coast as we are, of course, past midnight and into Thursday. Toronto, Washington, I started to mention this earlier. These are two teams that, to me, are just not all that interesting from a fantasy perspective because most of the guys that should be owned are owned. That is Mar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, Valanciunas on the Toronto side, and then I guess Damari Carroll, although he's been a little bit of a letdown so far. And for the Wizards, John Wall, Otto Porter, Marcin Gortat, Bradley Beal, and Markieff Morris. The starters play big minutes on these teams, and the only thing that came out of this game that was different than the norm is that Patrick Patterson finally broke double digits in his relatively large minutes, but he's still not a guy that I'm trusting anyway. So any stories in this game that you feel are worth exploring a little bit deeper, or is this kind of one of those, all right, well, that game happened?
It's one of those games that just kind of happened. Damari Carroll's been disappointing this year. I'm nervous about him because he still only said it, as of a week ago he's at 85% or 90% or something like that. He scares me because I think he overestimates his own health, at least from last year. On top of that, no, I don't really think so. I think Washington's more interesting, and they're not even that interesting.
Yeah, that's two fairly uninteresting teams because there aren't those borderline guys. That, to me, is the stuff that people really want to hear about. It's not the big names. That's not what we're here for. If you want to hear how the big name guys did, put on the ESPN highlights at the end of the night. They can tell you that. We're here to tell you how the other guys did. And in Houston, New York, Courtney Lee, who we kind of bagged on in the morning show, actually had a decent ball game tonight. 16 points, 2 threes, couple steals, a block. No rebounds and only 1 assist, but I'll tell you what, if he's getting you a couple steals, a block, and a pair of threes every night, well, then you got a guy you'd actually want again. But, man, the consistency with him is killing me.
Yeah, he's always been like that. He doesn't score all that much almost no matter where he's been his entire career. He's really more of a 3-point guy that's going to trickle in some steals there, some points here and there. And he's not going to kill you anywhere. He's just, he's like a poor man's Gary Harris, essentially.
On the rest of the Knicks roster, the only thing that had kind of become a little bit of a story was that Joakim Noah had a sort of more traditional Joakim line yesterday. It big rebounds, big assists, and a couple of blocks. And today, he played against a team that didn't have a traditional lumbering big man, as was Andre Drummond yesterday. And Joakim only got 18 minutes. So he's really not meant for your team. But if you have a club, for instance, I actually have a team where I am highly deficient in assists and blocks, and Noah is sort of a weird guy out there that does those two things, I wouldn't play him when they go against a team that's going to run. This is a guy where you're going to want to deploy him maybe once every week, perhaps, if that, and you have to have roster space for it. Otherwise, don't bother with him. What about the Houston side, though? We got a big game out of Montrezl Harrell. Where did that come from?
I mean, there's been some talk about him since the preseason that Clint Capella wasn't going to have like the absolute dominant hold over the center minutes, and Montrezl Harrell came through in a couple preseason games and had some really big lines. So I'm not shocked at all by that. Clint Capella picked up 3 fouls in 21 minutes. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with his playing time, or they just did not like the way he happened to be matching up against that front court with Kristaps playing a little bit more center tonight. But I mean, in the end, if Montrezl Harrell is going to play 26 minutes a night, he's a guy who's going to need to be owned. I don't know if that's going to happen. Probably not. But he's definitely a guy to look for if Clint Capella ever goes down or loses his starting role, because he's shown he can rack up points, rebounds, and blocks really quickly. Yeah,
you can't go and get him after one ball game, but if he does it again, then certainly you could potentially do so. And as long as we're live, we might as well mention the Cubs just doubled in the go-ahead run in the top of the 10th inning. They now lead the Indians 7-6 and are still batting with 1 out. And I apologize. I know this is an NBA podcast, but I've called baseball for a very long time, so I've got one eye on one screen and one on the other. But don't worry, if you got a question, pop it into that chat window. We are here until 10 o'clock Pacific time, unless we totally run out of things to talk about, but I don't foresee that happening. Not with a 10-game card, Jordan, so let's keep moving. Lakers, winners on the road. They beat a decent Hawks team, a Hawks team that had actually been playing pretty good defense, and they just kind of forgot how to play defense tonight. And a Lakers club that, and I worry, by the way, that this is something we're going to see a lot of guys that are playing 20 minutes or more. And in fact, every healthy player for the Lakers, I think, now what do we got? 10 guys into the rotation tonight, and all of them played somewhere between 16 and 31 minutes. So Luke Walton is splitting his minutes. He's making sure that everybody gets an opportunity out there. And tonight, you got a good game out of Luol Deng after a couple of quiet ones. D'Angelo Russell had a monster of a game. This is the one that people have been waiting for a few nights. Lou Williams continues to play well. Larry Nance has looked excellent since Moskov went down. Even Nick Young got into the mix. So, on the Lakers side, there's a lot of questions about who you go and pick up. And to me, where I stand on all of these guys is Russell, you got to own. Clarkson, Randall, probably guys that you're going to have on your team. Brandon Ingram, to me, is not a guy you really need right now, but will be relevant later in the season. But the thing that changed, at least, in terms of the Moskov injury is that if Larry Nance is playing 25 to 30 minutes, he's an interesting big man in that he's going to get you some steals and blocks, and he's going to shoot a great percentage from the floor. So if we can get an idea on Moskov, Jordan, do you put Nance on the radar? Because he's creeping on there for me for sure.
Yeah, 100%. He is their most athletic front court player, probably by a mile now, which isn't even saying that much because Larry Nance isn't that athletic. But he's got more spring in his step than Julius Randle or Timothy Mozgov or Luol Deng at this point, and he boards and gets points and gets defensive stats really efficiently. So he could be a low end guy for most of the year or a prime streamer.
On the Atlanta side, the battle for minutes at the 2 and the 3 spot continues. Kent Bazemore and Tim Hardaway Jr. were the two guys that won that battle tonight. Thabo Sefolosha and Kyle Korver were the two guys that did not. This looks like it might be a thing, and I'm starting to get a little bit worried, Jordan, that this might be a thing for a while. What the heck do you do if you own any of those four guys?
It's rough being a Kent Bazemore owner because this happened to him last year too. They played him 27, 28 minutes a game last year, and really it didn't play out to his averages. It played out sometimes he played 20 minutes, sometimes he played 33. I think it really depends on how much they like the matchups and whether or not that they want a longer guy and Thabo Sefolosha, who is a more consistent defender, even if Kent Bazemore has good opportunity there. Tim Hardaway Jr. They've been getting more run, and they really like him. They've been putting him through Hawks Academy, but he's not going to be a relevant fantasy player, but he can leech minutes from people, which affects everybody else. Kyle Korver is probably going to, he'll be inconsistent too, just because of his age, but in the end, he might end up being the best fantasy player out of the two. I mean, it's both him and Kent Bazemore, but you're going to see them all leech minutes from each other and have really inconsistent nights as they either rest guys or, play matchups how they want to play them.
Yeah, this was a situation that was kind of an issue last year, more so because of Korver's injury, and then also you had Sefolosha and Bazemore kind of alternating who was healthy enough to go. So you never really had a great idea of how the minutes were going to fall if all of them were healthy at the same time. And we're seeing it so far this year where Bud is going to go with, whoever fits the puzzle better. Which piece actually is the right one on any given night. Dwight Howard had a monster game tonight, by the way, and he actually made 70% of his free throws. He's been pretty good for the Hawks so far. I like to bag on Dwight, but he hasn't been that awful, and so I won't pick on him so far this year. But, boy, if you're owning any of those four guys we mentioned, you got to just hang tight for a little bit longer. There's at least a decent chance that someone's going to get hurt, and at that point, then there will likely be enough minutes for all of them to kind of creep back into at least a little bit more consistency. We actually already talked about a couple of games on that list that were coming up chronologically, so we'll leap ahead to a real grindhouse throwback in Memphis, where in overtime these two teams combined to score 172 points. I have one word to describe this ball game: yuck. But how about Lance Stevenson, huh?
Lance will make him dance, but man, 45 minutes out of absolutely nowhere. Uh, I had no idea what was going through Alvin Gentry's mind tonight, but
Alvin Gentry, how soon do you put him on the hot seat? Unrelated.
I, until they get Drew Holiday back, I think he's going to be fine because they know that their roster is quite thin. So he's going to get more chance than he really deserves, to be honest. Because I mean, I really liked him as a head coaching candidate, but I have not liked what I've seen from him since then. I mean, he plays really funky rotations and has some strange ideas about who best fits next to Anthony Davis at times.
Yeah, they tried some different things tonight, which maybe gives fantasy players. I don't want to say pause. In fact, it's probably the opposite in this one. It gives fantasy players hope because Buddy Hield played 31 minutes and had 18 points in a very nice night. And Terrence Jones finally got into the mix with 28 minutes. Not a big ball game for Terrence, but 7 points, 9 rebounds, a 3, and a couple of blocks. The guy that can hit the three-pointer and block shots is a rare commodity in fantasy basketball. And Jones had already been dropped by a lot of people. To me, though, Jordan, and you can feel free to agree or disagree. In fact, sometimes it's more fun when we don't see eye to eye. But for me, I need to see Jones play 20-something minutes one more game before I go back out and scoop him, because undoubtedly he's been dropped in a number of leagues at this point. And then on the Buddy Hield front, I know a lot of teams probably already had him, but to me, this felt like a game where Gentry just sort of rode with guys that didn't look exhausted because Anthony Davis had a bad game. Tim Frazier only played 14 minutes. He's been huge for this team. Solomon Hill played only 10 minutes. And Omer Asik played 35 minutes and didn't score. He took 2 shots in this game. So I'm thinking aberration a little bit. But, boy, I'll tell you what, if Terrence Jones can actually play 20-something minutes again, then he becomes an immediate pickup because his upside is through the roof.
If Terrence Jones is on your waiver and you have a free roster spot or a free streaming spot, by all means add him, because I mean you should jump early and then get off the bandwagon if they don't quickly, if he isn't getting 20 minutes a game and he's getting a DNP again. The thing that this game screams to me is this is the second night of a back-to-back from them. So I think that explains the irregular minutes all around. And I think that explains why Terrence Jones was a DNP last night, because he's still coming off the knee injury from the preseason. So, I'm willing to speculatively add him and give him a little bit of leash, maybe a couple games, but, you got to be willing to cut bait with him pretty quick because he has not been a big part of the rotation thus far. I mean, they played Dante Cunningham 38 minutes last night.
Memphis.
Then played him 5 this week, and they played, Lance Stevenson 44. So this game's a throwaway to me. This is all about the back-to-back.
About the other side, though, I mean, you can't really throw it away, I guess, but JaMychal Green had sort of an unusual game in that he scored 21 with 6 boards and 3 threes. James Ennis, 16 and 10. Marc Gasol had a quieter game by all accounts, but he did have some nice peripheral stats, assists, steals, blocks, and the like, and Mike Conley continues to score at a nice clip. But Jarrell Martin, Wade Baldwin, Vince Carter, Tony Allen, sort of all irrelevant, and Zach Randolph had a classic Zebo line of only points and rebounds. And, of course, you're still looking for Parsons and Brandon Wright to get healthy with this team, and Andrew Harrison, who had played darn near 40 minutes, didn't play tonight. So, I mean, what's going on with Memphis? And we did, by the way, have a question in the chat room about JaMychal Green and what to expect from him going forward.
Well, he was the guy I wanted to talk about anyways, because JaMychal Green, I don't think he's going to be like a really explosive player, but he's going to have consistently solid value throughout this entire year. I mean, he's playing over 28 minutes a game, and the thing that sticks out to me is he's shooting the three really well. He only attempted a handful of them last year, and this year he's really upped his attempts, as have many big men across the entire NBA, including one Marc Gasol. And if he's going to do that, then power forwards that can shoot threes and get you some steals, block some shots occasionally. He's not going to dominate defensive stats, but I mean, hopefully he can approach 1 each a game. And he kind of contributes across the board. It'll be a nice low-end asset.
So what about a guy like Ennis? He seems to continually creep onto the radar. I mean, he's a guy that I've been kind of on the fence about since opening night, where he goes from having a good ball game to kind of a bad one. But on a night-to-night basis, it does seem like he does something for you. Is he, to me, though, the other side of it is, isn't he a little bit of a short-term guy? So where do you value him?
He's one that really baffles me. Like if you're concerned at all about Chandler Parsons or his knee injury, or you own Chandler Parsons for that matter, I think you should grab James Ennis and just let him take you where he takes you. He's not going to be a guy you feel any qualms about cutting at any point, and he scored 16, 5, 8, 16, and 15. So he's hit at least 1 3 in every single game, 2 threes in 3 separate games, and he's boarded pretty darn well, and he's shooting the ball well. So if he's going to do that and get steals like he's been getting, then yeah, he deserves absolutely to be owned. He could fall off a cliff at the drop of a hat and be irrelevant for the rest of the season. So don't be surprised if he doesn't. But like as of right now, I think he should absolutely be owned to see what he can do going forward. He's getting too many minutes not to.
Dallas got creamed by Utah. Anything that jumped out at you in this ball game? Because for me, that's another one that falls into the who gives a flying hoot. This game was exactly what you expected from your fantasy guys, except worse on the Dallas side.
Yeah, Utah's good, and they're either the best defensive team in the league or the second or third. So that they're going to do this to teams consistently, night in and night out. And if you have any other options that aren't studs that you're playing against Utah, I mean, I would find a way to get them out of your lineups every single time because they're going to be slow-paced games with, very, very bad scoring efficiency, very low assist totals, etc.
Portland and Phoenix, that one still going, tied at 103 right now. You got good games from both centers on the Phoenix side. Alex Len finally shot over 50% from the field with 3 blocks. Tyson Chandler had 15 rebounds, but the caveat there, of course, is that they split minutes. And it's going to be tough for both of them to have big ball games when they're both eating from the same bucket or drinking from the same bucket. So, what we're seeing right now is that Tyson Chandler is a decent rebounding specialist. But, I mean, do you feel comfortable with either of those guys? Because in my estimation, I'd kind of rather look somewhere else for somebody that has a little bit more of a long-term appeal.
No, not even a little bit. I was a big Alex Len guy the last couple of years, but he has not been able to get his field goal percentage up, and he continues to struggle with it. And you can't struggle for this long, even if you are a young player, especially being a center and have fantasy appeal. So I think he's a guy that we need to keep an eye on going into the latter half of the season because he's probably going to get more run as Tyson Chandler wears down. But for right now, no, absolutely. I would stay away from him. And just because he scored 18 points tonight, no, I'm not putting any stock into that.
You know who's quietly having a decent start to the season, even though he's missing all of his shots, is Al-Farouq Aminu. I talked about him a little bit on the early show today. Not as many minutes tonight as you would like, but he did make a couple of threes, 5 boards, 4 steals, and a block. And if the shot ever really regresses to 41 to 42%, where he probably will be at the end of the year, he's going to go from being kind of borderline to being very, very relevant very quickly. Now, what you're seeing tonight in this game is that a guy like Evan Turner has been a better matchup, so he's seen more minutes. Myers Leonard has played 24 minutes so far tonight, so it's a little bit of a grab bag in Portland. I wouldn't draw a ton of conclusions from this, but I am going to reiterate what I said on my morning show, and that is if Al-Farouq Aminu was dropped in your league, I am a fan of picking him up because I think that those shots are going to start to fall at some point. He's going to have a week or two where he shoots 60%, and you're going to have a guy that does an awful lot because he can rebound, he can assist, he can steal, he can block shots, and he can hit a 3. There just aren't that many guys out there that can do that combination of things. He's just cold right now. What about you at the Portland side? I mean, are you comfortable with anybody like Mo Harkless, Alan Crabb, Evan Turner? To me, Al-Farouq Aminu is the guy out of all of those that would be the first one I'd look at.
Absolutely. And the big thing that I'm liking that I'm seeing out of Aminu this year is he's getting tons of steals and blocks again, and he's rebounding at a really high clip, and that's what you saw when he was playing power forward and 20 some minutes a game for Dallas when he really came on and got that nice contract from Portland. That was his thing, and his steal rate and his block rate and his rebounding rate were just down across the board last year. And I kept waiting for it to regress, and it never happened. And the shot will start falling for him at some point. He's not going to be a great shooter, like Ted, but if he's going to shoot 42% or whatever it is, and he's going to get that unique combination of threes, rebounds, steals, and blocks, that's absolutely worth having. And I think he could be really good. I mean, he still ended up as a top 100 asset last year, and I think he will again this year.
The last game on the docket is Oklahoma City and the Clippers. They're still playing. That game's in the fourth quarter, and it's pretty tight and an oddly low-scoring game, but not that odd if you've been watching the Clippers so far this year. They seem to be, and this is purely eyeball test because I'm not a basketball coach. I look at fantasy numbers and I look at the way teams are playing, but the Clippers really look focused on defense so far this year, and the fact that they're not shooting the ball well tonight, 37% from the floor, and they are deadlocked with a decent ball club, that tells you that this team is going to start winning some games on the defensive side of the floor. And you know what? It's not fair for me to say that because they've been pretty good defensively for a couple of years. You can just see it a little more so far this year. So are they slowing the pace down, Jordan? Are they just is it a renewed energy on that side of the floor? Is it less chirping and more grinding? What is it about this Clippers team that makes them look a little tougher after week one?
I think they're just a really good team overall, and they've always been a very good defensive team and a very good offensive team, top 10 in both for the last few years. If they can continue to play Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan on the floor at the same time with this much defensive focus, I mean, they're going to continue to do these to some talented offensive teams. Not to mention that Chris Paul's one of the more talented point guard defenders in the league, but which can explain why things are slowing down. Sometimes guys just aren't shot isn't dropping everything. But the Clippers look really good this year. I think they're really underrated to begin with.
One thing that I also noticed about the Clippers is it does seem like there's a little bit more of an effort to play the bench. Not a ton more, but 15 to 20 minutes instead of 12 to 15. And to me, that type of thing could be important for some of the key assets as you move later in the season. I don't know that I'd really give the Clippers a legitimate chance to win the championship, but they're probably, would you say top 3 in the West? I think I might put them in the 3 spot.
Yeah, they're going to be right around there, either 2, 3, or 4, in my opinion. The good thing to me about them, especially when you're talking about their minute distribution like that, is they're going to keep wanting to fight for a higher seed. And they're going to be one of those teams that has to play, their 3 players minutes, a consistent 30 minutes a night in order to do so. So you really don't have to risk those players being DNPs down the stretch or getting their minutes slashed in half because Doc Rivers is wanting to rest them because they're gonna have to play. It's the same way that Russell Westbrook is gonna have to play. It's some of these big name players like Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and your LeBron Jameses. They're really good fantasy players, but you have to worry about them getting rested down the stretch and not being a fantasy asset for you anymore, which can be a huge problem. So it's nice to see that, Chris Paul's only going to play 30, 32 minutes a night instead of 38. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
I once again give everybody full permission to put Fox on your television because it is now 2 outs in the bottom of the 10th inning, and the Cubs lead the Indians 8-6. Cleveland is down to their last out. A question from the chat room, Jordan. Should I drop Robert Covington and pick up Terrence Jones? Man, oh man, that is a tough question because you got one guy who's a little bit more reliable, but with the arrow pointed down, and you got another guy who has a very high ceiling who's been nothing short of completely unreliable, who finally had one decent ball game after letting that thing simmer on my brain for a moment. I'm saying no. I'm sticking with Covington at least another ball game. I want to see Terrence Jones play in a game where the New Orleans starters are playing their usual allotment of minutes. I'm sticking with Covington.
It's a hard no for me. I think Robert Covington's a much more a much better player to have for the moment, and he's playing consistent time, and Terrence Jones isn't playing consistent time. And that's the big differential there for me. As long as Robert Covington's getting the time, he'll produce somewhere for you. You have no idea if Terrence Jones is going to play next game or if he's going to be a DNP or not.
Well, ladies and germs, that's your chat room questionnaire. That's your look at the games as they ended. I think it might be time for us, Jordan, to watch the end of the World Series, and for you, because it is now 20 minutes to midnight, if I'm not mistaken, where you're at, to get a little bit of rest.
Yeah, I'm going to go catch the end of this World Series, too. It's a big moment for these two teams.
At the risk of extending the show so long that we missed the end of it, did you have any points, kind of the immediate reaction stuff from tonight's game that we didn't hit? I don't want to cut you off without giving you a chance here to bring up any additional stuff.
Nope. I say let's get to the World Series. Let's watch that because that's what everyone wants to get out of here and do anyways.
Well, thanks for the questions, everybody. This is Fantasy NBA tonight. We're going to cut it a little bit short tonight. He's Jordan Smith. I'm Dan Besbris. Again, we'll be back tomorrow morning. Vince and I will have our live Thursday show. That'll be a theme the rest of the NBA season. Make sure to subscribe to us here at YouTube so you can get all the free show alerts when we do it. And I want to remind everybody, as the Indians just got a walk to extend their season, that our podcast feeds are separating. Fantasy NBA tonight, because it will be a premium subscription next week, will remain without a podcast feed. You'll have to get these alerts by signing up for the premium membership or by viewing them at hoopball.com. Fantasy NBA today will get its own live stream starting as soon as iTunes verifies it. And, of course, the Cause and Brew Show, if you're already subscribe to that, you will continue to be. That's the one thing that does not change, but everything should be a lot easier to find. So again, thanks to Jordan for hanging out with us on this Wednesday night. This was Fantasy NBA Tonight. Go watch the World Series, everybody. And Vince and I will catch up with you at 11 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. We'll talk about some of these same ball games and take some questions from you then as well. Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.